Good morning, third grade. I'm just going to go over a few major points for Booker T. Washington. Let's get started. Why Sunday was the best day of the week for Booker T. Washington. It's simply because his mother would cook every Sunday. And every Sunday, she would bring back molasses to the cabin. So molasses was his favorite snack. So every Sunday, he wished every day was Sunday so he could enjoy molasses. Me personally, I don't like molasses, but some could favor why. Now, as we move on, let's get into the word freedom and then Booker T's early childhood. Now, early that morning, he awakened and found his mother kneeling beside his bed. He was only around 5 or 6 years old, and he would hear his mom say, "Please, Lord, let Mr. Lincoln and his armies be successful." Let's pause, take a stop right there. Just think, Abraham Lincoln. This is all during the time of the Civil War getting ready to begin. Okay, so each person we have covered so far, it has been a different viewpoint of the Civil War. Let's move on. So basically, he would think he will always hear the word freedom, Booker T. Washington, no matter how many times, but he didn't know what that meant. As we move on, he would basically think President Lincoln or Mr. Lincoln had something to do with freedom. Now, Booker T had lived in a one-room cabin with his mother, his little sister, and his older brother John. Now, also he had a stepfather named Washington Ferguson, but he worked at a different plantation. So basically, they were all slaves. One day, Booker heard that Washington Ferguson had run away to join the Union Army. All right, let's move on. One day, Booker had heard Washington Ferguson ran away to join the Union Army. Remember, the Union were with President Lincoln, and they were against slavery. And remember, the South were the Confederacy, the Confederate Army. Now, the Civil War had lasted 4 years. That's a long time for the war. But the day finally came where every slave was free. They had freedom. But just think, now the slaves were free, but they didn't own anything. They didn't have any homes. They didn't have any animals. And most of them could not read or write. So life was very, very hard. Now, Booker's mother heard about from her husband, Washington, that he found a place in West Virginia. So they traveled there. Now, the many days of traveling on mountains and going to rivers, they finally made it. Now, this trip was a 300-mile trip. Just imagine you're traveling over 300 miles and you didn't have access to any cars. That's a long journey. Now, as we move on, many families who used to be slaves came to work in that place, Melville, Virginia, and they worked in the salt mines. Now, Booker's family happened to work together to earn money for things that they needed to buy. Work began in the salt mines at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's very early, 4 in the morning. Now, one night, Booker T, he wished out loud that he had a book to read. Little did he know that his mom was listening to him, and then his wish was granted. She gave him an old book, which was a Noah's Webster Blueback Speller, and he was very excited to hold it in his hand, his very first book. But Booker T did not know how to read or write, so he would take his time each night just to study the words, each letter. But soon, as the time passed, a young teacher named William Davis came to Malden, and that's when young children and older adults went to learn. Now, Booker T could not go to school during the daytime because he has work, because he had to work in the salt mines, but he was lucky enough because the teacher started school in the evenings. Now, Booker T's first day of school, the teacher was doing a roll call, and he noticed many people were given their first name and last name. Now, students, if you may not have known, many slaves, their last name was given from their slave owner. Say, for example, my first name is Mr. Brandon. My last name would be Code. So my last name would come from my slave owner. Now, Booker, he was not given a last name. So when it was his turn, he decided to tell the teacher, Booker Washington. And that name stuck. Now, as years went past, Booker T, he learned at a school for black young people in Virginia. He was so excited. The school name was Hampton Normal and Agricultural Institute, later known as Hampton Institute. Now, this was a 500-mile away journey that Booker T decided to take. But he only had enough money, to ride halfway to school on a train. So just imagine what he did the rest of the trip. He rode on a stagecoach or he walked. He would walk the 250 miles. He was that dedicated to learning. That's a lot of dedication. Some of us today don't like to walk 1 or 2 miles. So just imagine walking 250 miles just to go to school. That's a lot of dedication. Now, excuse me, Booker T. Washington was also only 15 years old when he went on this journey. He was that dedicated. Now, as time goes by, one of Booker T's teachers at Hampton Institute taught him how to use the Bible and how to read the Bible. Before that, he never cared about it. But now, he loved it. Now, it was time for Booker T to go back home. There, he began to teach his friends, his neighbors, and everyone else around him about the Bible and all the lessons that he learned at the school. And he got to the point where Booker, he started a school and held night classes. And even, he taught 2 Sunday schools. Booker also taught families how to plant, how to also repair their cabins. Later on, years down the road, as time keeps going by, we progress through Booker T's life. He heard of an old farm that was for sale, and he realized that was an excellent location for a school. The school will be called Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute. Now, as we move on, it was actually time at the first Christmas at Tuskegee Institute in Mission, Washington. He taught his students the real meaning of Christmas, that God sent Jesus to earth to be the savior of the world. So you can only imagine before then, he probably realized the meaning of Christmas was basically someone named Santa Claus, Saint Nick, giving presents, but he taught them the real meaning. Now, more and more students finally arrived to Tuskegee, and they realized they need bigger and better buildings. It actually got to the point that he actually built with some of the townspeople. They built their own buildings, brick from brick. Now, by 1900, Tuskegee Institute had over 1,000 students and 80 teachers. Now, Mr. Washington, after a while, he was asked to travel to many cities, give many speeches. He also was invited to the White House, and even he was invited to have tea with the Queen of England.